Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, where I seek truth in the world's best books. I'm your host, Eric Rostad, coming to you from the beautiful Books of Titans studio in Franklin, Tennessee. My goal is to read 52 books per year and share what I'm learning. I'll talk a bit about each book, tie ideas together from a variety of genres, and share the one thing I always hope to remember from each book. Today I'm going to cover the Wingfeather Saga by Andrew Peterson. This is a 4-book series, and these were books 44 through 47 for my 2022 reading list. Well, I'm the business manager at a local bookstore here in Franklin, Tennessee called Landmark Booksellers, and we carry this set, the Wingfeather Saga. And we, almost every day, somebody comes in and buys at least one of the books from this series. So oftentimes somebody will come in and they'll buy book 1, and then they'll read that, and maybe a little later come in and buy book 2, and so on. And then some adventurous souls will come in and buy the whole set and get going. So I've been intrigued for a while. I've read Andrew Peterson's nonfiction works, and I have always looked at these, but they look like they're for kids. And so that actually kept me away for a while, just thinking that maybe I wasn't the intended audience. And so I just have stayed away, but I decided to bite the bullet and add them to my reading list this year. And so I had them added at the end of the year, and decided to move them up a little bit in the rotation just because there's an animated series coming out in December, and I would like to watch that. And so but I don't want to watch it before having read the books. So I decided I needed to read the books before seeing the animated series. So I'm looking forward to that, but that was the reason I moved these up. And so I just finished these recently here. The series, it's a work of fantasy. And so there are dragons, there's monsters, there's trolls, there are even birds with belly buttons. Within this world, there are 3 human siblings, and they are fighting this evil character, Nag the Nameless. And this Nag the Nameless has it out for these kids for reasons that I'm not going to get into here because I do not want to spoil this series at all. And so as much as possible in this episode, I'm going to try to avoid any spoilers. So these 3 siblings are going on a journey. There's this fantastic array of memorable characters, and they are out to confront evil. But not just evil like Nag the Nameless, evil of out there, but also evil that is inside of them, trouble that is inside of their minds, things in their past that haunt them. So there's multi levels of what they're fighting against in a lot of ways. There's another book in the series. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But in the introduction there, Andrew Peterson, the author, talks about the process of writing these books. And I found that to be very interesting. He said this was a 10-year process. So to write these 4 books, it took 10 years. But he started with world building. So before he ever wrote any of the books, he created this world. And so he started with a map. And then it just kind of sounds like it was a series of if-then scenarios after that. So if the land was like this, then the people that would have lived there would have been like this. Maybe they were seafaring people. And then if these people were on the evil side, how did they get evil? So if they were evil, then this must have happened. And so he just kind of started creating this entire world to where this is all in his head. He's writing it down, he's drawing it out, and then he wrote the stories within this world that he had already created. And I just love that idea. I mean, it's just a fascinating thing to think about as you're. And I didn't read that until after I'd finished the series, but to look back at the series and to think that that's how he approached it, it's really it's neat to think about that. Just in terms of initial impressions of the series, I was really amazed, and mainly on the level of just thinking through the creativity that is required to create something like this. It boggles my mind. The depth of character, the level of creativity, the struggles that the characters went through. I was talking to a father recently who read these to his kids, and he said that he would have to take breaks. Like, he's reading them to his kids, and like the characters going through something so deep and he resonates with it so much that he says to like tell his kids, just hold on a minute. Daddy needs a break. Daddy needs to, just take a breather here. But that's true. I wasn't reading these to my kids this time, but I could see that being the case, where you kind of need a breather. Like it's a fantastic story, but it's also very deep on a lot of levels as well. It was also hilarious. I mean, a lot of it is taking place in just darkness. Like they're on this journey and it's dark, and there's just evil all around, and it's oppressive. And then Andrew Peterson will have this just hilarious footnote of what's going on. And so I loved that. It added a level of humor amidst some of the horror of what's going on in the book. But yeah, if you read through it, you have to stop at each of the footnotes and read those. I'll cover some of the themes in the next segment that stuck out to me, but they were very impactful throughout the book. This series, I felt like a kid again when I was reading it. I felt like I was back 10, 12 years old, and just this like joy of discovery, or joy of reading, like just getting deep into this world. And yeah, it like, yes, it's for children, but I never thought that when I was reading it. I was thinking like this is for adults, but it also enlivened this childlikeness inside of me, which that doesn't happen a lot when I read. And so that's just something that stuck out when I was reading this. Just a few notes on the books themselves. So there's this 4-book series. The first one is called On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. And then the second one is North or Be Eaten. The third one is The Monster in the Hollows. And then the fourth one is The Warden and the Wolf King. But there are also 2 other books I want to mention. And so there's a 5th book called Wingfeather Tales. And this is outside of the series, but Wingfeather Tales is a group of 7 stories that kind of take little pieces of things that may have been mentioned in the series, but that you didn't go into depth about. Maybe it was a land or a book or something. And so what these tales do is it's 7 different authors. Andrew Peterson wrote one of them, but then there's 6 other authors, and they kind of just extrapolate out from what is in these series. And I'm reading through that right now, and it's so funny and fantastic, and just kind of adds to the whole thing. So once you get through the series, get that Wingfeather Tales as well. And here's a little tip. I read the hardcover version of the Wingfeather Tales, but I've seen the paperback version, and you can get the paperback version for a good price. I'll link to that in the show notes. But if you get the paperback version, there's a complete map of the entire world that I did not see in any of the hardcover books. So if you want that map, it just helped me kind of visualize the entire area. So if that's important to you, I would get the softcover paperback version of the Wingfeather Tales so that you have that map in front of you. So there's the Tales, that's the 5th book. There's a 6th book as well called Creaturepedia, and you have to get this if you're reading through the series. Creaturepedia is a book of all the creatures that you will come across while you're reading the book. So it's kind of like a guidebook on the creatures you're reading about. And these creatures are so funny and like imaginative, and then, so in the Creaturepedia, you've got a illustration of the animal, and then just like these hilarious notes about the animal itself, the creature. So if you're going to go in, like, just get all 6 books and just start with them, and especially like just have Creaturepedia next to you while you're going through all the books. One other note here is, or I've got a couple other notes. One thing is, stick with it. I found that it was like in the middle of book 2 that it hit another level. And so if you're in book 1 and you're just having trouble with it, you just gotta stick through it, stick with it. And for me, it was hitting the middle of book 2, and it was like, this is something special. So stick with it is my suggestion if you're having trouble with book one. My final suggestion here is to read it. Like, buy the physical books and read it as opposed to listening to it. If you're young, listen to it. That's fine. If you are an adult, like, get the books, because the footnotes, as I mentioned, are just hilarious. You've got to read the footnotes. And then there's the map. There's maps. There's illustrations. It's good to have the physical book with you as you're reading this. And for even more pleasure, read it to your children. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. The 8-year-old has started reading book one. I think I'm going to give her another year or two, and then we'll probably just read through it together. And I'm looking forward to that. But in terms of age group, I would recommend 10 years old and up. But yeah, do read the physical books. And then my last note, I kind of hinted at it before, but don't think of this as a children's series, and don't let that stop you from reading it, because I did not have that thought at all as I was reading it, and it was very deep and it was very enjoyable. For reading stats, this entire series, the 4 books are 1,422 pages. That took me 36 hours and 19 minutes. That was over 22 days, and so it averages 61 pages per day. I read this between October 16 and November 7. I want to give a little context for that time. So you may think 36 hours is an extremely large amount of time to devote to books. Is it worth it? I hope in this episode to convince you that it is worth it, but also just want to give some comparisons. So I read Narnia last year. And I also read The Lord of the Rings last year. And Narnia took me 24 hours total to get through those 7 books. The Lord of the Rings plus The Hobbit took me high 40s hours. So this kind of fits right in the middle time-wise between Narnia and The Lord of the Rings. So in segment 2, I'm going to cover three big themes that kind of showed up throughout the series. Again, these are kind of like overall themes that don't give away spoilers. And then in the final segment, I'll cover the one thing, my one key takeaway, the thing I'm still thinking about after reading the Wingfeather Saga series. Wanted to share 3 themes that I saw throughout the series that really struck me. I think part of the reason they struck me is I've experienced them, or I've thought about them a lot in my life. So the first one is that the stories are true. There is one character throughout the series that has read a lot in his past, and he's read stories of adventure and creatures and distant lands and things like that. And throughout the series, this character comes across the things that he's read about, and he keeps making the statement that the stories are true. The stories are true. So let me read one part. This is actually from a different character, not the character that keeps saying the stories are true, but this is somebody else talking, but it aligns very closely with this idea that the stories are true. All my life I've wanted to believe that the stories are true. I've never been able to quiet the pleasurable ache between my heart and my stomach that I felt as a boy when I read these tales. And now that I am wrapped up in the Wingfeather Saga, that ache has grown so that I can hardly bear it. Here I sit in the presence of queens and heroes and magic. Yes, magic. It is only when we have grown too old that we fail to see the Maker's world is swollen with magic. It hides in plain sight in music and water and even bumblebees." End quote. I love that. I remember being a kid and reading stories of like dragons and princesses and kings and distant lands and just wondering, like, are these true? And I remember last year reading the series by Russ Ramsey, and he talks about true tall tales. Just this idea, like, what if the things that we read about are true? What if the stories we grew up reading, what if they're true? I love that. I love that idea. I love thinking about that, and it just comes up over and over in this series, and it was so delightful. The second thing is songs. Throughout this series, music and songs play an integral part in the stories. There's a deep power in music. So I want to read a few quotes here from the book, and then just share a story as well. Her song rose from the depths of her heart and sent a burst of shimmering chords into the matter of the world. They sizzled from her in a million strands. Waking something bright in their bones, the music reached into secret places and did wondrous things. End quote. That is not an exact quote. I skipped around quite a bit there just to avoid stating names that would give away spoilers, but the ideas there of just these songs bursting forth from her, and they sizzled from her in a million strands, just going out in all these different directions, waking something bright in their bones. The music reached into secret places and did wondrous things. I love those descriptions. Here are a few more. So that one was from book 3. The next set here are from book 4. There's a powerful magic in songs, you know. You can aim the heart, point it at what matters. End quote. Next one. She heard music that was deeper than the song she was playing. And then the final one. Images passed through her mind like waves. End quote. And so as she's playing this music, the images are passing through her mind like waves. And that reminded me when I was, this is probably like 10 years ago, I used to play, I play the violin, and I would play with this guy, and we'd play at restaurants and bars. And I would just get into this like trance of playing, and I would be so zoned into what I was doing that it's almost like my mind would go blank, and this reel of like a video reel of images from childhood would come back and just go through my mind. And these were images I had not remembered for a long period of time. Like it was really exciting because it would just bring back these memories that I had forgotten. And it was the strangest thing. Like that doesn't happen like with anything else in my life. Like if I'm driving or something, I'm not like, I don't have this video reel, but for some reason playing music and doing that and just being so zoned into playing the violin with these songs, like it would just open up this like video memory in my life. And so when this happened in the book and the images passed through her mind like waves, I had that thought, same thing of like that. And then the other quote of she heard music that was deeper than the song she was playing. And there's a powerful magic in songs, you know. I had another experience when I was 18, and I was doing music at a church, and I was playing a song, and it's like I came out of my body, and it was like above my body for like a few seconds, and it was a really cool experience. But like throughout these series, the music does stuff like that throughout this series. And so part of it was just, I loved that idea, the power of music. And then other parts of it were just like, I've experienced something similar, and this is kind of being written about in like a fantasy thing of like music doing these crazy things, but it's like, I've experienced some of these things with music. And so that may sound crazy to you, but like, I connected very deeply with that part of the book. The final theme that stuck out was just, this idea. This comes towards the end of book 2. One of the characters says there are things that ain't been paid for, and he was talking about his life. And this is just this devastating scene. This man being confronted with things in his past, and just he makes this comment: "There's things that ain't been paid for." And so I think that kind of the bigger theme here, and something I really appreciated about this series, was that there's a constant battle for the soul of the people in these books. There's a comment in book 4 that even the noblest soul could be broken. And you see that with so many of the characters. There's not like this cookie cutter good guy and cookie cutter bad guy over here, and then they do all bad stuff on this side and all good stuff over here. It's like the characters had a depth about them and in a deep struggle that I think anyone who reads these books will identify with these characters. It's whether it's in the mind, of just the mind kind of attacking the person. There's a ton of like temptation. Like, do I follow the the things that are said about me in my head, or do I follow what I know is true? So just that constant battle. And then I keep thinking about that line by Solzhenitsyn where he says the line dividing good and evil passes through the heart of every person, not through political party. Like there's not this good political party over here and this bad one over here. It's groups of people are made up. It's made up of people, and within each person, within each heart, there's a line dividing good and evil. So we all struggle with that. It's not, if you get rid of this group of people over here, then everything's going to be great. It's no, the problems is within each of us. And you see that very strong in this series. The other thing I really appreciated and thought was important is that the evil characters in the book, it says over and over that they chose that. And it's actually just a really neat thing to consider how people became these animals in the story. They were human and they become animals, but they chose it. They had to participate in that, and sometimes it was a forced manner in which they participate, but there was a level of choosing in that. So a lot of layers there, but just this kind of overall theme that no matter how good the character was, there was a deep struggle in each of them, and no matter how bad the character was, there was a chance to make it right. There was a chance for renewal. So those are three themes that stuck out throughout the Wingfeather Saga series. Now into segment 3 and the one thing, my one key takeaway. Key takeaway is a weird concept when considering fiction. So if I'm reading nonfiction, the one key takeaway might be something that I implement in my life or something that I want to change immediately. So that's usually kind of easy to pick out in a nonfiction work. In a work of fiction like this, what oftentimes becomes my one thing is the thing that stuck out the most and that I can't stop thinking about. So for this series, it is over the issue of names. Names are crucial throughout this Wingfeather Saga. The names that people are given, the names that people call themselves, that other people call them. They're the main mother of, the mother of the three main characters is constantly reminding her children who they are. And so when she drops them off for school, she said, remember who you are. And there's this constant saying their names over and over. This is who you are. And you're going to hear things in your head that are going to tell you that that's not who you are. You're going to hear things from other people that are going to tell you that that's not who you are. But remember who you are. Remember your name. I had a neat connection just with the book I read prior to the Wingfeather Saga, and that was Why Art Matters by Alistair Gordon. And he makes the observation that for any creative work, for any work of art, the final part of that is naming it. That is the final act in a work of creativity, in a work of art, is to name that work of art. And it's an important part of it. And so I was just thinking of these things throughout this series. The power of names comes up over and over, but just I don't think I'd ever given it much thought. But the power of names and how we consider our names, what we tell ourselves our names are, and how that can get thwarted and disrupted by what our minds tell us are our names or what others say our names are. And so just a neat thing, but a very key concept throughout this series. And there's just something that I can't stop thinking about after reading this series. So to recap, it's a fantasy series. If you've listened to this episode or this podcast for a while, you know that in the past I had trouble with fantasy. I just did not like reading fantasy books. And a friend of mine suggested when I was reading The Lord of the Rings, I did not enjoy The Hobbit, and I wanted to continue with The Lord of the Rings, and I shared that I was having trouble getting through The Hobbit. And he said, read it as if it were true. And so I did that with the rest of the Lord of the Rings, and I loved it. It shifted everything for me. I think in the past I went into fantasy just thinking that it was child's play or not realistic, and it wouldn't help me in other books. So like if I read something about history, that could help me understand another book I read that took place during the same time. But if I'm reading a fantasy book, like I'm getting involved in this world that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's not going to help me in anything else. But when I started reading it as if it were true, that shifted anything. That shifted everything. So I went in with that mindset to this series as well. And so if you have trouble with fantasy, this might be a good place to start for you, but please go in reading it as if it were true, like as if this actually happened, and I think it'll really help you. If you have children and they are 10 years old or up, I think you would just have a really nice family time if you read this series to them at night. I've heard a lot of parents doing that. I've seen over and over on social media too. I think just this kind of goes into how special this series is. I've seen over and over parents who have read this to their children, but then the parents saying that they have wept while reading it. I did not weep while reading this. I did not get teary-eyed or anything, and it's very hard for me to get teary-eyed when I'm reading. That happens very rarely, but just to see, I could see how that would have happened just in reading this series, and that I see that happen a lot as I see other people reading these books on social media. So that's interesting to me. I felt like a child reading this, and I mean that in a very good way. It brought back some of that childhood joy, and that's a very cool thing. And I do not experience that a lot. So that was a neat part of this as well. The last thing I liked is that this series, throughout the series, there is just a highlighting of the importance of books and stories and bookstores, and that just brought joy and a smile to my face. So I loved that. I do hope you give this series a try. Don't feel like you need to be a kid to read it, but it might bring back some of that child in you. So I hope you read it. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you've read the Wingfeather Saga. You can email me at eric@booksoftitans.com. Let me know what you thought of Wingfeather, maybe some of the things that you got out of it, the big themes, or the parts of the books that really tugged at you. You can buy the book from Landmark Booksellers. I'll link to it in the show notes as well. If you use the Books of Titans, if you just as a coupon code use Books of Titans, that'll give you 10% off the book. You can also follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter, and go to the website. I've got a lot of resources there to help you find the best books and to create your own reading list. I'll be back in a week or two to discuss another book or series from my 2022 reading list. And until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.